Heyo, hope audio's working well. Looks on my end like it's actually picking up my voice. That's good. Okay, yeah, cool. I had my phone going just to make sure that it could capture my voice. So, hey everyone, welcome to the next month's town hall. Hope y'all have been doing lovely. I'm gonna try and give people some time to show up. Um, Today I've been doing a lot of research on HOAs. Got some interesting policy proposals for that. We'll see how that goes. I've got a lot more research to do. I've only just started, but I'm excited for that. We do have 7 questions already emailed in ahead of time this time, so that's pretty cool. We'll just jump right into it, I guess. First question, how do you plan to protect SNAP and Medicare benefits? Well, first off, we should be advocating for universal health care. That'll just get all of the medical industry, all the corruption, all that right out of the gate, out of that. And not only that, but that'll be a far more robust protection because by having it to where you have to apply for benefits here and they're all separated, it allows, as we've seen, them to be sort of chipped away and eroded individually because they're all separate. But if it's all cohesively like under one thing, we've all got universal healthcare, then it's a lot harder to erode that. It is still possible, as we see in the UK and Canada to some extent, but it is a lot more difficult and it is more robust. And then as for SNAP, very similar, but not a universal like food policy proposal, but more so just making our food more affordable through better trade deals, better agricultural practices, and also having stricter regulations on businesses so that there's an actual correlation to how much money you had to make the product versus how much you're able to earn versus arbitrary market measures and how much people are willing to pay, because that oftentimes will get manipulated and taken advantage of, especially when it's things that are needed for survival. It's one thing if like you're inflating a Ferrari or something like that, but if you're inflating the price of like bread or something like that, that affects people in a very different way. Second question, what is your platform in regards to prison reform? Well, look to the Illinois Green Party website for that. They have a great few resources, and the National Green Party as a whole. I don't have any disagreements with their platform in regards to prison reform at all, and I don't admittedly have anything unique to add to that really beyond that. I would just say reference that. Third, how can we overcome Citizens United under a corrupt Supreme Court? Yeah, this is a difficult question because one of my grievances with the Democratic Party is I don't know why they've listened to anything the Supreme Court has done post what Mitch McConnell pulled with Merrick Garland, which was just so blatantly unjust and so blatantly against, if not literally the law, at the very least the spirit of the law. So first off, we're going to need significant reform in the entirety of the Supreme Court. I don't think you're going to get anything that positive like an overturn of the Citizens United or anything like that with this Supreme Court, or with just simply waiting and hoping that with when people leave, it just happens to coincide with times in which there are presidents that aren't Donald Trump, and therefore you could get some justices in there that are loyal or at least got in there because of people other than him. So getting rid of all the current judges in the Supreme Court would be a pretty good way to start with that, quite frankly. And given how many of them have been proven to have lied under oath, I don't know why they're still allowed to even serve in their current positions. It's beyond me. And the fact that the whole Democratic Party is pretty much apathetic to it. I remember Biden, I don't want to stack the courts. Like, bro, stacking the courts is a gentle suggestion. Like, if anything, we should be firing most of these people that are currently in the Supreme Court for just blatantly lying under oath, as far as I'm concerned. Number 4, well, a serious question, do aliens exist? I suppose maybe statistically, there's a high probability that there is some other life out there in the universe, but do I think any other species from another planet has visited us? I haven't seen enough evidence to suggest that. Fun question, though. Number 5, what would be your first bill in Congress? It would have to be something pretty broad and comprehensive. I would probably call it something like the International Law Realignment Act or bill or something akin to that. And it would basically be a broad sweeping change in American foreign policy, as described in the title itself, to realign us with actual international law itself, because I think what that will do is a few things. For one, that will make the world a more stable place. For two, that will put more pressure on other countries to actually follow international laws, because America is a big player, and if a superpower is following international law, that gives a lot of backing to that international law. But if none of the superpowers are following international law, like what's currently going on, as we see, it just completely erodes away and becomes completely irrelevant. Not just that, but if we have a smarter approach to what's actually going on the ground, and our policy is more reflective of that actual reality and keeps up to date with that, that'll be more advantageous for how we relate to other people when it comes to diplomacy, when it comes to trade deals, because we'll actually understand people's cultures and be operating from an understanding that we get where they're actually at the moment. So that would be pretty comprehensive. I mean, we're talking everything from pushing for further recognition of Kosovo's independence to Taiwan, to Gaza, to West Sahara, to reunification of Cyprus. It would be pretty broad sweeping, in my humble opinion, at least. Number 6, favorite era of history. There are two different ways I could take this question. Favorite era to like learn about, or like time travel or hypothetical, which place would I want to go to? Favorite era of history to time travel to would probably be sometime post Alexander and the Hellenic era, just because it wouldn't take too much work for me, since I already know like a couple hundred words and I can read the alphabet to learn ancient Greek. And so that would be pretty practical. And in that era, you could speak Greek and communicate with officials from as far west as Spain to as far east as India. So that would have been pretty awesome. And not just that, but it was a fascinating time where a lot of cultures were intersecting. I mean, you had Buddhist temples with statues of Heracles and stuff on them, and just very much a cultural exchange era, and the multiculturalism just on display that we could just see in the architecture, let alone what it must have been like in a daily life to see. That would be pretty cool. Favorite to learn about, though, is probably Bronze Age, Mediterranean, East Mediterranean. So like Hittites, Minoans, the Minoans especially, quite frankly, are probably my favorite civilization to learn about in history. They're just really, really fascinating to me. Their art style is fascinating. I mean, the fact that they would have had the first a semblance of a kind of printing press like thing where they had, metal stamps and stuff like that, and they would imprint that on things. Their plethora of gold, their plethora of purple, which was a very rare and expensive dye at the time, their immense urban sophistication. I mean, they had plumbing almost 5,000 years ago. That's just absolutely astounding. So they're really fascinating. And not just that, but they're sort of elusive in the sense that we have writing from them, but we haven't deciphered what linear A or the oh gosh, I'm blanking on it, what the language on the Phaistos disc is. We don't know what that was, or Cretan hieroglyphs. So we've got 3 different writing systems on the island floating around that we can't translate. So we know there's a lot of stuff going on, and people are even writing it, and yet we don't know what it is, even though we have it, because we just can't understand what it is yet. So that's fascinating to me. Number 7, can you clarify your policy/platform in regards to the conflict in Ukraine? Yeah, so obviously being a Green, the main goal is peace immediately. The real, I think, main contention is how much do you think really Ukraine should be willing to concede to get peace immediately? That seems to be the angle that most people are asking it, but I think you have to go from both sides and think of what's going to bring both sides to the negotiating table at a serious level that will bring long-term peace. First off, from the incentivizing Russia to actually come to the peace table, I would incentivize the American government personally to give more support and increase pressure on Japan's claim on the Kuril Islands and Georgia's claim on South Ossetia and Abkhazia, because what that will do is give Russia a lot more diplomatic headaches. And not just that, but their military would have to be displaced on multiple points all across their vast holdings, that is Russia, which will spread their forces thinner and therefore give them more incentive to come to the negotiating table and actually accept a deal. As far as from the Ukrainian side, I hope that they're willing. Here's the thing. I totally agree with the sentiment that we should not be rewarding Putin for imperialism, but I am concerned that being so much, we have to get all the land that was previously recognized as Ukrainian back is not viable because there's just not enough military support for Ukraine. People, clearly the EU and the United States, are not willing to risk a full-out blatant war with Russia from their end. And so therefore, I hope that they would be willing to accept, if we could actually get Russia to come to the negotiating table with what I was talking about and actually be serious. If there was a deal on the table and it looked something like Russia gives Ukraine back all these new states that were quote unquote independent now, but they retain Crimea because that was a separate wave of conflicts. It's part of the main, same broad imperialization process, but there's sort of two different times at which that violence sort of escalated. I would hope that Ukraine would accept that. But I'm not Ukrainian, so I'm not going to tell them that they would be wrong if they felt that that wasn't unacceptable. All I can tell you is that from my perspective, I think that would be the best possible outcome that's within reality. Obviously, the best possible outcome would be everybody leaves, the conflict ends, the previous borders were recognized, so international law is back to where that was, and everybody gives a bunch of money so that all the places in Russia and Ukraine that were destroyed are all rebuilt. But that's not going to happen. That's unfortunately not realistic, as much as I would prefer that to be the outcome. So we have to push as close to that as we can possibly get, and that's what I foresee at the moment, unfortunately, as the closest we could possibly get. And that brings me no joy to say that, because again, I don't feel happy effectively rewarding a country for invading another, particularly when that one country is the larger than the other, both militarily and population wise and economically, etc. I don't tend to like big states bullying smaller ones around. That's just not my politics. So yeah, but that is all the emailed questions. Chat seeming pretty chill, nothing there either. So I think this is probably going to be another less than 15-minute stream. We'll chill for a bit. Give anybody some time if they want to throw something in. Thanks for coming out, anyone who did. Appreciate you. Yeah, I think we're going to call it there. Much love to y'all. We'll do another one next month. I'll plan something as soon as possible. Sorry I wasn't able to get the forewarning out on the social medias that this was happening until a half hour beforehand. I normally try to do both the day before promote it and the day of, but I've just been so busy with so many organizational stuff going on. So this was the best I could do. So yeah, love y'all. Have a good one.